Modern Dadhood. Modern Dadhood podcast.
Marc, it's nice to see you.
It's very, very good to see you too, my friend. I know both of us have been very busy. So this
Real busy.
You know what we need to do? We got to get the families together in real life, IRL.
You want to pull out our calendars right now? No, let's do it after the recording.
Let's do it after the recording, but I'm thinking like a backyard get together or something like that. Maybe some burgers, hot dogs, maybe like a kiddie pool or something.
Podcast.
Podcast. Is that how you get yourself jazzed up to record? You just yell out, podcast.
Maybe that's how we should start it from now on.
I love it.
This podcast right here is called Modern Dadhood. And as you and I have said
Many times.
69 times now, I think, it's an ongoing conversation about the joys, challenges, and general insanity of being a dad in this moment. My name's Adam Flaherty, and I have two daughters who are 8 and 5.
Good
Almost
Lord.
forgot.
Good Lord. It happens.
Let them know who you are. My friend who has a sharp new haircut.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm looking real slick. My name's Marc. Check it. And I have 2 children, both boys. They're twins. It's incredible. It's a roller coaster ride, always. And my house is always loud, always a mess. But that's life. And it's wonderful.
No, they're fraternal twins.
That's right. They both came from the same father.
Is that how that works? Thank goodness.
No, I don't think that's what that means, actually. No. Yeah, they're fraternal twins. They're not identical twins.
Though they do look a lot alike.
They do, yeah. They both have blonde hair, blue eyes, light skin.
They also have very unique things about the way they look, too. I mean,
they do.
It's not hard to tell them apart.
No, they're getting to the point where like their features kind of, we all do this thing where we kind of look at our own baby pictures and our spouse's baby pictures and we kind of compare at ages,
Yeah.
and yeah, they each sort of, it's weird because they each sort of have features from both of us, but in different ways. So they both look like both of us, but different.
Yeah. Well, you know what's weird is my older daughter, who's 8 now, there's not really any distinguishing features that you look at and say, that's me or that's Sarah.
Yeah.
When there are certain pictures of her where she looks like my dad when he was young, which is interesting. My 5-year-old looks, most people say, a lot like me and my side of the family, my mother and my sister. But Sarah has a sister who has a son. Actually, you remember Chad,
Yep.
who's on our podcast. So
Yep.
Chad and Katie have a son who is 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at him compared to pictures of Sarah, my wife, so not even his mother, his aunt, when she was the same age, a year and a half, there's a lot of similarities, which is, I find super interesting.
Yeah. Kids, man.
Genetics.
Jeans, pants.
We should probably remind our listeners that although we talk about fatherhood a lot, and sometimes we come across as with, little grains of intelligence, that we're not experts on fatherhood.
No, not the slightest bit.
I just like to remind folks of that from time to time.
Yeah, probably
That
smart.
if you're looking for experts, seek them elsewhere.
Or suggest that expert to us, but we'll interview that person.
Which is a wonderful segue to our guest for today's episode is Matt Fox. He is a coach who works with dads specifically on how to balance their lives. So how to balance, work life, home life, how to make your family a priority, make your happiness a priority. I spoke with Matt recently. Marc, obviously you weren't part of that conversation. So just as I'm excited to share the chat with our listeners, I'm also really excited for you to hear it.
Yeah. I too am stoked.
So stick around for that. I got a little something I can share with you.
Okay.
My 8-year-old just returned from an overnight camp. It was 3 nights overnight.
Wow.
And it was the longest that she has stayed away from us, and really probably the longest that we haven't communicated with her. Spoiler alert. She had a great time, and I'm certain she's going to want to do it again, probably next year, probably for more nights. Yeah. But it was kind of a big thing.
That is a big thing. I feel like I have several things that I want to hear about. One, of course, is I want to know her like emotional feelings leading up to the departure and knowing that but I also want to know mom and dad's perspective here too. Like that must have been kind of hard to let her go for 3 nights for the first time ever. Tell me both sides.
So the high level story is that it's a camp that my wife attended for a number of years when she was young. When my wife got an email or some advertisement about this camp that they were doing, and my older daughter fit into the age group of the youngest group of campers, she said, I'm going to see if she wants to do this. And so we brought it up with my daughter. She was instantly all about it. She was super psyched about it. And this was maybe a month or 6 weeks before. So there was like a good buffer of time for her to think about it. Mm-hmm. But, we kind of talked about it periodically, and really at no point did she express any concern about it. Yeah. Like a couple times I asked her in the day or two prior, I was like, are you feeling nervous about this? Like, have you thought about what you might be feeling like when we're driving away? Just because I didn't want her to become overwhelmed with emotion seeing us drive away without at least thinking about what that might feel like. Yeah, that could be kind of jarring, in that moment, like a jarring realization of it could be this sort of, oh shit, I'm on my own now. Yeah, exactly. But no, she was cool as a cucumber about it. And even when we dropped her off, she gave us big hugs, and we hopped back in the car and we left. And Sarah and I have talked about it since, like, it was almost harder for us to not put the car in park and jump out and give her one last hug. Right. Driving away for us, it was weirder for us than it was for her. She was signing in on some forms and she had all of her stuff and she didn't even really think a thing of it. So, and at that point, it's like you almost run the risk of like making her nervous by showing her that you guys are nervous. There's sort of a line that you don't want to cross there. Yeah. Long story short, she did really well. It was weird not having her around for a couple days. It did give us some really nice kind of one-on-one time with our 5-year-old, and it was good for her to have a different kind of attention. As much as I might have expected it to be a little bit more dramatic, like for her and for us, it really was pretty easy, and she had an awesome time. Can you imagine at this point sending the boy, like, not that they're old enough to do that, but can you sort of put yourself in that mindset of when they're 7 or 8 years old and going off to an overnight camp, and suddenly you and Jamie are a couple who are not responsible for kids for several days? I mean, yeah, it's on one hand, it's hard to fathom that happening. On the other hand, it's a very exciting prospect knowing that maybe there is a time in our future where we can send our kids away and just have the house to ourselves for a few days. I mean, I'm really excited for the boys to go out and experience things like that. But to think about like an overnight, it's going to be a big thing that someday they're going to experience. And I'm excited for them to eventually get to that point. But it is pretty hard. It is pretty hard to imagine that now. For sure. Yeah. Off doing things, making friends, having experiences, learning lessons, without us there. Yeah. But I'm glad it went as smooth as it did. And we honestly couldn't be more proud of her. All right, Marc. So a few weeks back, I reached out to Matt Fox. I'm not sure how I came across him, but I'd been following him on LinkedIn and really enjoying his content. And he writes a lot about stress and anxiety and, time management and work-life balance. But the core of his work is with dads and, finding ways to prioritize things in your life that are most important to you. Your happiness, relaxation, time with your family, and also, being able to feel a sense of accomplishment in the work that you're getting done too. So I was pretty fascinated by it. I really like the posts that he makes, the blogs that he writes. And so I reached out to him and asked if he wanted to join us on our podcast.
Well, shit. Bring him in. Hit play.
Don't confuse Matt Fox, however, with Matthew Fox, who played Jack on Lost. This is a different guy.
Oh, that Matt Fox.
I don't want to mislead anybody. Yeah, no, this is a different Matt Fox.
Anyway, you know him from Lost.
You know him from the Heart of Dad podcast.
But here's Matt Fox.
So I'm pleased to welcome Matt Fox to the Modern Dadhood conversation. Matt is the host of the Heart of Dad podcast, which is centered around helping entrepreneurs and senior leaders be at their best for their families and their businesses. Matt coaches dads on things like work-life balance and helps them to discover the best parts of both of those things before it's too late. Matt, I've been following you for a while now on LinkedIn, really enjoying your philosophies, and I'm really glad to have this time with you. So thanks for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for that introduction, Adam. I'm really looking forward to this conversation together.
So we usually start by asking folks about their families. So tell me about who you are sort of outside of business. You know, how many kids do you have? What are their ages?
Yeah, sure. So I'm married and I've got 2 kids, a bit of a gap between the 2 of them. My eldest is an 8-year-old, just turned 8. And my second was born just a little bit earlier than this time last year. So he's just over 1. And so we're rediscovering the joys of having a baby in the midst, having completely forgotten, I have to say, what the
Wow.
revolution that creates in your life. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about your business coaching. So from what I understand, please correct me if this isn't accurate, but the psychology that your coaching is based on really stemmed from your own experience building businesses and then having children and being forced to balance those parts of your life. I wonder, can you share a bit about your backstory and sort of how you ended up doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. Such a great question. So I would call myself a reformed workaholic. And I spent most of my 20s and 30s really pushing very hard at work. That was kind of the template I'd inherited from my own dad. I didn't really know differently. I didn't find it very easy to set any boundaries between work and home life. I didn't have children at that time. And in my early 30s, I was very fortunate to be able to start my own business with 3 other friends. That took me on a path to extraordinary growth as an entrepreneur and a business person. But it also started a journey of personal growth, because in that period, my workaholism nearly took me out. I got to a point where I was burnt out. I had to take a complete break from the business. I wasn't sure whether I could actually continue. I had an enormous amount of shame and concern and despair about that. I felt I was letting everybody down in my team, with my colleagues, with my clients. And yet now in retrospect, that was the beginning of the big reset. You know, that to really start thinking about how I was being in the world, what I wanted, and how I was showing up in my own life and what I was willing to put up with and tolerate. So at that time, I was in therapy and I was really exploring with my therapist all the unwritten rules and unconscious rules that I'd created in myself to live that way, which was living actually without great joy, without a lot of lightness. There was a lot of suffering and a feeling of trappedness. I felt really, really trapped. When it came time to sell that business, I had already been thinking about a career change. I'd really enjoyed it. Come through that really dark period and made some changes already to set better boundaries, to take better care of myself, to maybe put myself first, maybe for the first time in my life, but not in a selfish way, but in a way that actually kept body and soul together, perhaps. And I had this calling to work with people, and my first direction was to go in the direction of mental health. And I trained as a psychotherapist, and I left the business I'd created and we'd sold it, and I went into psychotherapy. The year I set up my psychotherapy practice, my first child was born, my son was born. And that pitched me into a complete crisis again. I had all these ideas of what being a father would be and how that would fit in with my life. And the reality was completely different. And we had some particular challenges with our first child, which I didn't really understand very well. Were quite unexpected. And I don't know whether somebody would have diagnosed me with postnatal depression, male postnatal depression, but I think I was just in that sense of everything is in a mess here. I don't know how to handle myself. And here I was as a psychotherapist, and I was carrying all this discomfort and shame around how I was being as a dad and who I was being. And it was a very, very difficult time. I had done a ton of coaching in my business. I'd been responsible for the leadership and talent development in the business, and I loved that part of it. So I had this sense of I would love to go into coaching now. But what have I learned about this experience? And now I'm a dad. I have all these thoughts about how I'm showing up as a dad. I don't hear many honest conversations, and I'm so glad there's podcasts like yours and other people now coming into the space and saying that this is the reality of being a father. And I really felt like I wanted to explore within myself, then explore with others what it means to be a father and committed to your business, what it means to be committed to your work life, but not sacrificing the fatherhood part and not sacrificing the work part. Because actually I came to realize that although I didn't want to be a workaholic anymore, my identification with my work and my enjoyment of my work was really important to me. I didn't want to have a life where that wasn't important to me anymore. At the same time, I didn't want to have a life where, my children were a kind of a side thought or not that important to me, or kind of like, just a slice of time in the evening and the weekends. That didn't feel right to me. So all that has come together really, along with some deep learning about human psychology and the nature of life, to bring me into this coaching offer, which is really about love, presence, connection, performance, but without the deep costs that I'd experienced in my 30s.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. There was a lot there, and I have several things that I want to kind of jump back to. But one of the questions I had was, when you had started your psychotherapy practice and you had your first child, was that just you, or did you have a team of people working with you? And the reason I ask is because I know that it may be different here in the United States. If a new dad does get a paternity leave, is maybe 2 weeks. And I know that, I owned a business and owned and operated a business when I had both of my children, and I took, 2.5 weeks, and then I was right back at it. For me personally, one of the positive things that's come out of this otherwise horrible pandemic is that for me, I have more flexibility in my life now. And that's maybe a whole separate conversation. What I would want to ask you is, when you opened your psychotherapy practice, you had your first child, did you feel an obligation to get right back into work as quickly as possible? And if you had other people working with you, did you expect the same of them?
Yeah, I love that question. So the timing was slightly different for me. So when I exited my business, my child was born, I negotiated my exit, and I had a notice period of 3 months. And I took the notice period after I took paternity leave. So I negotiated some paid time off, which was the standard in the UK is 2 weeks. And then I took 2 weeks off unpaid. So I took a month off. And then I went back to finish off on a reduced hours, my contracted work with the business I'd sold. And in those extra 2 days, I felt compelled to start my psychotherapy practice. And what I see now, and I saw not then in the moment, but afterwards with reflection and the support from others, that I had an enormous amount of anxiety about being a dad. And my familiar place to go to was to work hard. Uh-huh. So I filled my time in those first few months, because my emotional state was like, oh my God, this is just like a storm arriving in our family. I don't know how to handle this. I'm going to just do what I know what to do, which is to work my backside off. And I remember having my son on my lap or my chest napping in those first few months. And I was writing my website copy for my psychotherapy practice. And there was a sense of like, I can't really manage those two states. I'm just going to have to mess my way through it. And it was only later when I kind of got through that period of anxiety that I realized this isn't sustainable or even a way of living. I was kind of going back to the type. I was going back to how I'd been in my 30s, and that didn't end very well. So I knew, okay, I need to do something here. I need to make some choices and think differently about this. And that led me to reconfigure my work once I'd finished with the business I'd left, and I decided that I was going to work 4 days a week. I wasn't going to do full days. I was going to allow time in that day to be with my family and connect with them. And I was always going to have a 3-day weekend. That was going to be a non-negotiable for me, and I've been living that way since. There's been some impacts in terms of income. I've made some choices around income, but there's been the flexibility, which you alluded to, which I think has been very powerful. And then there's been the priceless gift of time with my family that I couldn't have done before.
It's wonderful that you've been able to do that. And I would imagine that in your coaching practice, you are encouraging people to figure out what their priorities are and adjust their life accordingly. But one thing that you said was that it inevitably made some changes to your income. And obviously, money is kind of a big factor in all of this. And I think that the truth is a lot of times, whether you are salary, whether you're fully a freelance owner operator, whether you are working hourly, the more you work, the harder you work, the more revenue you're generating, right? So how in your practice do you help people to kind of rationalize this idea and to prioritize their free time when they may see that as leaving money on the table that ultimately they're creating for their family?
Happy people work better than people who are sad and frustrated and trapped and depressed. And flexible working is one way to support people into happiness, because I've met very few dads in the time that I've been doing this work who say, truly in the bottom of my heart, I want to work harder and not spend time with my family. No. The longing is to connect with their children and their spouses or partners, and to be able to enjoy that time, however motivated they are in their work situation. So I think you asked the right question, which is, to help people really see what's important to them at the deepest level, and to let go of the anxiety around income. We all crave security at some level, but we also need to understand what is enough, what is adequate, and what is important. Uh-huh. I think the pandemic has shown that stability and security are illusions. We cling on to this idea that we know what's going to happen tomorrow. And when I think back to the beginning of 2020, between January and March, when it really hit in the UK, if you told me in January this is what was going to happen, I just said that was absurd. And yet, from one week to another, when we went into lockdown in the UK, our experience of life changed 100%. So, the idea that a paycheck or anything like that buys security is just a fallacy, really. So I want to help people see that a sense of security comes from a far deeper place within. It's kind of at the core of who we are, and everything else is kind of played through the game of life and what we choose to create.
That idea of trying to identify what is enough, what is adequate, is really interesting to me, because, maybe I could land on this amount of income is enough for my family to live comfortably and for me to feel like we are secure between my income and my wife's income. But if I do this extra bit of work, I could save up for a vacation that is going to be an experiential thing that my family has all together. And if I don't do this work, maybe we don't take that vacation. So that's where it seems to me where it could get a little muddy. But good.
I just want to respond to that for a second. And I love the idea of experiences and vacations or holidays as experiences. Of course, they contribute to kind of the richness of your family life and your childhood and the life that you go into. But for me, the vacation isn't what creates happiness. The vacation is an experience, and fantastic. Mm-hmm. If you go on amazing vacations, why not if you can do that? But that isn't where happiness is created. Happiness is created from a sense of who we are within. I can be happy going 5,000 miles for a holiday. I can be happy sitting in my garden with my children. I think when we land in that place, then we're much freer to choose. Because if creating the experience as a child, it becomes a pressure. I have to work those extra hours or do that freelance piece because, there's an expectation that I have to create experiences for my family throughout their childhoods with me. Then that doesn't feel to me like a light place to live from. If the lightness is, I'd love to create that experience with my family, and working those extra nights or days for a few weeks creates that, and I can do that from a place of lightness, fantastic. But as soon as it becomes like a pressure, that doesn't seem so attractive to me.
A few minutes ago, you mentioned this word present or presence. For me, between my full-time job and various, creative projects that I take on outside of work, I'm on the computer a lot. And that may be when they come home from school, when working from home, I'm on the computer, or, I get up early in the morning before the rest of my family is up so that I can get into some of that, either work or things that I, creative fulfillment, things that I enjoy. But it's not uncommon for my kids to be around when I'm still in work mode. And I guess the challenge is how to be disciplined in prioritizing that time. So, I find myself like when I am immersed in work, responding to them, but really not engaged with them. I wonder if you have any advice for someone like me who's driven at a high level, and I have a really hard time pulling away from it at the detriment to relationships with our kids.
Yeah, I love that question. And I think so many men will be able to identify, and maybe women as well. I don't want to gender stereotype this, but I can identify with it as a man. I've definitely been in that place, and sometimes find myself in that place too, Adam. So it's such a great question. The first thing I would suggest to somebody talking about in this way would be to bring compassion to their experience, because I also hear that there can be judgment, right? I should be
Sure
giving my kids attention at that time. I shouldn't be focusing all the time on my creative projects in this way because it's to the detriment of my kids. Am I judging myself about this? Am I critical of myself about this? Because then it becomes a problem to fix. And what if you didn't see this as a problem? What if, as a possibility, what if this wasn't a problem? And to see what came up from that.
It seems like every answer you give really segues into another question that I had for you. And this is about the sense of overwhelm. And, that feeling being a result of our brains, spinning too fast and too much. In the past year or so, I have been in a pretty good structured program of almost daily hypnosis. And it's been working really well for me to kind of slow my brain down. And I wonder, is the practice of meditation a part of your coaching or something that you recommend?
I love this question. I am a completely failed meditator.
Oh, wow.
I've tried so many times in my life to get into meditation, and, I went for Buddhist studies, I bought apps, you name it, I've tried it. It felt like a failing and a terrible pressure I put on myself to be a better meditator. And then in the last few years, as I brought this kind of new understanding into my life and new ways of working, what I've seen is that there is a difference between meditation and a meditative state. There is nobody on the planet who can't get into a meditative state. We have this capacity to enter a meditative state very easily, actually. I really want to put it out there for anybody who's beaten themselves up for not being able to meditate, that actually that's not an issue, that there are so many ways to enter in a meditative state. And that is a beautiful state of being, because it's a metaphor for presence. It's a metaphor for stillness. It's a metaphor for quietness within. And from that place, we feel so connected with ourselves, connected with those around us, connected with the world, with a sense of grace and gratitude. So I'm 100% for helping my clients find a meditative state, but I'm completely agnostic about how they do that. But what we're prioritizing is finding our way into a meditative state, and you can do literally nothing and find yourself in that place. So,
are there any other ways that you sort of practice what you preach? Any other daily habits that really work well for you that you enjoy sharing with other dads?
For me, I suppose phrase that I have to bring into my consciousness on a regular basis is slow down. Yeah, I'm somebody who has always rushed at life and has got very busy and is always doing things. And so slow down. When I do that, it brings so many benefits. It brings me into presence, into awareness, into a more compassionate relationship with myself. So the thing I'm interested in is transitions, really. Transitions between work state and home state, getting up and getting into the day, and just taking a few moments to make a mindful, conscious transition. So I think just slowing down and really listening deeply to what I need, that to me has been the thing that I've been cultivating and has been the most helpful. Everybody's unique. They can have their own way into slowing down and presence. And that's really the only thing I think that matters in this. I think love and fatherhood, I wouldn't say they get a bad rap, because their fathers can be incredibly loving and have immensely big hearts and be supportive. But I want to invite men into a dialogue about what it is to love and to express love and to be love and to live love, because to me that is the heart, as in my podcast, The Heart of Dad. It's the heart of what makes life this wonderful, exciting, amazing, sometimes challenging journey. So I wouldn't want to finish the interview, Adam, without really bringing love into the conversation and inviting dads to open themselves to their deeper heart, to that loving feeling that is their essence. We can get so caught up in stories of what we should be doing and how we should be doing it, what we should be earning, how we can create security for our family, the things we're doing well, the things we're not doing well, self-improvement. If we strip all that away and return to the kind of the home, then for me, we connect with this essence of who we are, a masculine expression of love, but at the essence, the same as every other human being, that energy of love. And for me, that is what fatherhood is about, really, that exploration, connection with expression of that love.
Dads, I highly recommend following Matt Fox on LinkedIn. His posts always inspire me to look at parenthood-related things from a different angle. You can check out his podcast, Heart of Dad, which you can find wherever you listen to Modern Dadhood. And if you're interested in exploring one-on-one coaching with Matt, you can contact him right through his website, which is mattfoxcoaching.com. Matt, I want to thank you again for your time, and all the best to you and your family.
Adam, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I love the questions you've asked, and thank you for creating this space for other dads to explore dadhood in this way. You're doing some great work together with Marc for the world. It's a great service.
Do you hear that? Because it sounds like it's the right time for a recurring segment. It's just the universe quietly, ushering us toward a recurring segment.
So that's a thing now.
Did you hear that? My God. It was so clear and specific about which recurring segment. Yeah. Funny you should mention that, universe, because I do have a so that's a thing now.
Tell us what's going on in the Check It house.
Quick context. One of my sons in particular, I've said this on the show before, he gets a little floppy, especially in the evenings, especially if he's maybe missed a nap and he's super tired towards the end of the night. He gets particularly floppy, and he's not very good at controlling his body. And one night was the floppiness was particularly bad. He was also just mentally, he was just done, and everything was really bothering the hell out of him. I think in this particular night, he was trying to put some Legos together, and they kept, he's pushing, and then his hands go wild and the Legos go flying, and he gets really mad and he screams and he kicks the floor. And, my wife and I are like, we got to get these kids upstairs to bed, stat.
Pronto.
So one of them's sure, fine. Goes upstairs and is getting ready to get in the bath. This other son is just
we'll call him Jello Bones.
The flappier of the two is he does this thing often where he goes over to the steps, but then sort of collapses down on them. And then the only way I can describe the way he comes up the steps sometimes is as if it's, as if it's a slinky in reverse. Like if he somehow just does this weird, and it's just it's funny, but it's also really annoying because it takes him a long time to get up the steps. And so he's mad that
I'm picturing that scene from Wet Hot American Summer where Paul Rudd is in the kitchen with Janine Garofalo. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
And she scolds him for something and he just starts flopping around.
That's such
sulking.
It's such a good visualization. Yes, it's spot on. It's like that.
I love that.
And he's putting up a stink while he's going up the stairs, and he's mad about the thing that was happening downstairs. He's mad about having to go to bed and whatever. He's just exhausted. So we finally get to the top of the steps, and in the commotion, it's just a small area, and my wife's up there. The two boys are up there. I'm up there. It's a small little space, and out of nowhere, I think he's just taking some of his clothes off to get ready, and he just full force runs into a wall. And it's like major like thud, and then sort of falls to the floor. There's a second thud, and then he just wails, right? And I don't even know that it necessarily hurt that much, but I think he's just like had it, Yeah. And so he wails, and my wife and I look at each other, and our eyes roll. And then I sit down on the floor next to him to try to be like, it's okay. And because he doesn't really want me to comfort him because he's just so mad, and he's still being kind of floppy and kicking me and kicking around. And in this like exasperated, frustration, he's like half yelling, screaming, tears are just streaming down his face. He yells out, who even put that wall there? Like
that's so good.
Yeah. And so, and that makes my wife and I laugh, which again, in these moments, there's so many funny things that happen. And so often you can't allow yourself to take too much joy in those things.
Yeah, but that's pure comedy. How can you not?
Yeah, that was pretty funny. But so in an effort to try not to laugh, but to try to work with him, I am saying like, oh, I don't know, buddy. It's in a bad spot. It must have been somebody that built the house, one of the contractors or something. And he's so mad, and he wants more out of that answer. Like he really kind of wants an answer now of like who put that wall there. And so I was
as if it hasn't been there for his entire life.
Exactly. It was put there for the sole purpose just that afternoon so that he would run into it. But so as I'm reaching to sort of give him some kind of answer, I just pluck the name Ron DeSantis out of my head because I had been reading earlier about things happening in Florida. And so he's losing his mind. I'm trying to give him an answer. The name that comes out of my mouth is, I think it was Ron DeSantis. He put that wall there.
Like if the person who put the wall there is a jerk, you might as well pin it on an asshole, right?
Exactly. Well, so that then prompts my son to say a phrase that feel like I need more. I said this is going to be quick. It's not quick. I also feel like I need a little bit more context before I reveal the next part of this. Sometimes swear words are said around our house. Okay. Like my wife and I don't hold back. Right. And so our kids pick these things up and they say them, and we sort of have some rules around them. Like you can't really say, please don't say these words at school. You know, these words are special and sometimes it can only be used, we had given them the okay to use some colorful language around things like, for example, COVID. One day somebody was getting really mad and they wanted to yell about, we were doing a COVID test, and we said, you can say that COVID is stupid. You can say that. You can call COVID stupid. You can't call mommy and daddy stupid. You can't call friends at school stupid. It's okay if you want to say that about COVID. So my son is thinking about this in his head, as I just gave him this name, Ron DeSantis, to blame this wall in our house on. And he immediately takes to that and takes out his frustration verbally. And he starts going, stupid Ron DeSantis, stupid fucking Ron DeSantis. And he's like sitting on the floor My other son's like, he's in the bath now. He's doing what he's supposed to do. My other son, this son is like melting down, but now he's channeling it all towards Ron DeSantis. And it was very funny. And the reason why that's a thing now is because we've actually heard him now since then on several occasions get frustrated at something like a toy and quietly say to the toy, "Stupid Ron DeSantis."
That is so good.
Yeah.
That is so good.
So that's a thing now around our household. So
That's one of my favorite "that's a thing" nows
yeah,
that you've ever done. It's so good. That's so funny to me.
just channeling our frustration towards the particular individual that is divisive. Stupid Ron DeSantis.
Love it. That was great. Stupid Ron DeSantis. Dads, you can find the podcast Modern Dadhood, all of our episodes at moderndadhood.com. Wherever else you might listen to podcasts, that could be Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music. Wherever you listen, please subscribe. Please take a minute to give us a quick rating and a review. I'm talking like a one-line review. I would say equally, if not more importantly, please tell someone who you care about Modern Dadhood.
Word of mouth. Hey, while you're out there on the internet, because I know you are. I know you're out there.
You're out there lurking.
I know you're out there right now.
Lurkers.
You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram. We got a YouTube. And if you do end up on the site, we got t-shirts. We got dad hoodies. You can also drop us.
Yeah. No, you.
No. You can also drop us a line if you're feeling up to it at HEY at moderndadhood.com. We love to hear from our listeners.
We want to thank Casper Baby Pants and Spencer Albee for the music that you hear in our podcast. We want to thank Pete Morse at Red Vault Audio. That's redvaultaudio.com for mixing the show and making us sound great. I also want to thank Matt Fox for the really awesome chat. Marc, you have someone special that you would like to thank, don't you?
Yeah, while we're on the thank you train, I want to make a quick stop. And I want to say thank you for listening. Choo choo.